And a little further down, again, if you move left and right, you can see both feet. And again, as you see, this is not a long examination, it's not a difficult or long time to do an examination. And you can see all those beautiful features in the baby very, very quickly. And this is more than enough for a basic examination. And the reason we want to do this basic examination is because, especially in the era of cell-free DNA, there's this sort of perception that, oh, it's all okay because we're going to do a cell-free DNA test. Cell-free DNA test checks for trisomy 21, 18, and 13. It's going to be completely normal in an abnormality, okay? In a physical abnormality of the baby. So your cell-free DNA cannot identify structural defects. Very important to remember that. In contrast, there may be abnormalities in the baby that would make you not offer a cell-free DNA because it's much more suitable to do an invasive test, such as, for example, if you saw abnormalities associated with other chromosomal defects that are not trisomy 18, 13, or 21. And an identification of such abnormalities and of severe abnormalities is possible in the majority of cases. This is a protocol then for this basic scan. So general aspect of the baby, you confirm that you have a single pregnancy. In the head and brain, you're going to take those series of axial views through the head in order to see that you have a calcified cranium all the way around. Structures pulled backwards in the same way that at 20 weeks you have the brain pulled backwards and you have the lemon-shaped head and the cerebellum is banana-shaped. In the same way that is pulled backwards in spina bifida, and you have obliteration of the space at the back, which is also, as you know, the intracranial translucency. So there's the fourth ventricle there, and the coil plexus of the fourth ventricle. The cisterna magna just started to be behind it, and they're joined up at this early stage in the pregnancy. Same image then in the sagittal view, where you have those posterior aspects. Spot diagnosis. Why are we looking at the brain? What's the diagnosis here, guys? Yes, thank you. Yeah. And here, a little bit later in the pregnancy. Same. Yeah? Anencephaly, acrania, exencephaly, one and the same thing. It starts being covered by a membrane, and as the pregnancy progresses, amniotic fluid degrades that, and the brain disappears, and a little bit later in the pregnancy, you see this new here. And this is another abnormality. What's the spot diagnosis? Oral prosencephaly. Yeah. So you remember that nice division that we had at the beginning? So we had a nice division going from front to back. This is the level of the thalami here. Here, this is the thalami in the back. You see the aqueduct facilities that are also going backwards. So this is why it's so important to detect, to look at the brain. You don't want to be detecting oral prosencephaly at 20 weeks. There's a chromosomal abnormality this is highly associated with. Which one is it? Trisomy 13. Trisomy 13. Okay? Very highly associated with trisomy 13. Okay. Going to move from there, from those axial views of the brain and look at the head and the brain. And this is a sagittal view of the brain. You can see beautifully there the brainstem. Okay? Can you see the three little black spaces? People always say, oh, this is this and this is the other. I struggle. My brain goes to three. Okay? There are three black bits. If there are no three black bits, there's something wrong. Okay? So you can try and remember the anatomy, or just remember that there's three of them. The first black space that you can see there is the brainstem. The second black space you can see is the fourth ventricle, and that's what is called the intracranial translucency, but it's really the fourth ventricle. You saw it a minute ago in the axial view. And what's behind the fourth ventricle? The third black space, there. Come on, clicker. This is not working. Now this is done. Okay? So you've got to see all three of those in order to be able to exclude spina bifida. And in this case here, you can see mid-sagittal plane very nicely there with three spaces. We also look at, you can also look at the maxilla there and then the mandible, as pointed out by the arrows, and of course measure the nuchal translucency on that same view. This is a normal profile here. What's this? What am I showing here in yellow? There's a little gap in the maxilla. Can you see that? Or a maxillary gap. You can have a maxillary gap in the middle, or at the front, or at the back. And all of those called maxillary gaps are associated with cleft palates. So here's an example here of a maxillary gap at the front there. You can see the nasal bone, the mandible, and the gap there. And here's another one, an maxillary gap that's in the middle of the maxilla. And you can see that, in fact, you can see the tongue going through that. And both of these are cases of major clefts that you can then examine in the axial view. And I mentioned micrognathia a minute ago, and the mandibular gap. You can see the mandibular gap there on the right. That's the normal at the top. And the abnormal one at the bottom, where you have no gap. And you can see this normal if you run. Sorry, I'm going to need a few more minutes. You can see this normal line between the tip of the nose and the front of the maxilla. And if you draw a straight line through that, you end up behind the chin of the baby. As we've said, measurement of the nuchal translucency, even if you don't do chromosomal anomaly testing, is important because it can be an indicator of other abnormalities. As we move down the baby, we come to the chest, and you can see the lungs, homogeneously echogenic, and there should be no signs of any pleural effusion. And you can also assess the diaphragmatic continuity in sagittal section. And then, of course, we've talked already about detection of fetal heart abnormalities and the importance of using color Doppler and also assessment of the outflow tracts. If you do this carefully, you will be able to detect approximately 50% of all congenital abnormalities in the heart at 12 weeks. If you are not sure of something, beware especially of a single ventricle at this stage. If you're not sure of something, bring the patient back a little earlier. Don't wait until the 20-week scan. We move down in order to visualize the stomach and make sure that the stomach is on the same side as the heart, as you can see in the video up there. Further down you can see the kidneys, either in an axial view or in a coronal view. And of course, we measure the bladder. And in this particular case, you can see that that bladder is enlarged. This is a case of megacystis of about 7 millimeters. It's running, and that can sometimes need you to move from an axial to a sagittal plane and back again, especially when the baby is in an unfavorable position. Unfortunately, that video is not running. The reason we look at the umbilical cord insertion is to diagnose these two conditions. The one on the left is what? Exomphalos, and the one on the right is gastroschisis. And the difference between them can be subtle, but you can see a smooth border in exomphalos or in palace, it's the same thing, because it's covered with peritoneum. Smooth is a saccharide, whereas in gastroschisis you have an irregular border. And finally, we're going to go down to the axial view, and we can look at the umbilical cord vessels, the arteries. We can count the 2 arteries already at 12, 13 weeks. But please do not cause undue alarm if you have a single umbilical artery at this gestation. Firstly, it is sometimes not visible easily, and maybe not picked up by the Doppler, and we find that it's actually normal later on in the pregnancy. But more importantly, even if it is a single umbilical artery at this stage, most of them will have completely normal and healthy. Point there on the left, particular attention should be paid to the normal appearance of the spine if there's any intracranial signs suspicious of spina bifida. And these are the, this would be a suspicious finding here on that right side. So again, I remind you, 3 normal spaces on that left side: brainstem, intracranial translucency, sternum magna. And on the right-hand side, we have the brainstem with then no clear lines. And the reason there are no clear lines is the brain is pulled backwards. You can see the ventricle enlarged at the front of that right-hand side image. The brain is pulled backwards, and this baby has an open spina bifida, which you can then see in direct visualization. And the detection rate using intracranial translucency